A lot of police departments use some version of the phrase to protect and serve. And that sounds like it's some kind of promise. And in a moral or a professional sense, that's how many people happen to understand it. Police are supposed to protect communities and to respond to emergencies. Their number one responsibility is to enforce the laws, and they're also supposed to serve the public. But here is the civics question. So, is to protect and serve actually a constitutional duty that's owed to every individual person? I'm a high school history teacher, and I'm going to talk about this one today. Yeah, let's go. So, the answer here is probably a lot more complicated than you would expect. If it wasn't more complicated, it would probably just be a short, 15-second video and we just move on. But the phrase to protect and serve really became famous through the Los Angeles Police Department in the 1950s. And over time, it became one of the best known phrases associated with American police work. But a motto is not the same thing as a constitutional guarantee. In general, courts have held that police do not have a broad constitutional duty to protect every individual from private violence. And that may kind of like, really? Wow, that's maybe kind of shocking, right? But it comes down to how the Constitution is usually understood. Many constitutional rights are limited on what government may do to you. So, like, government can't search you unreasonably or punish you without due process or use excessive force. But the Constitution doesn't usually require government to protect you from harm caused by another private person. So there's one major Supreme Court case. It's DeShaney v. Winnebago County, and this was in 1989. Yeah. And in this case, the Supreme Court ruled that the government's failure to protect a child from private abuse did not violate the Due Process Clause. And then there was another case, Town of Castle Rock v. Gonzalez in 2005. A woman had a restraining order against her husband and repeatedly asked police to enforce it. Her children were later killed by him. And the Supreme Court ruled that she did not have a constitutional right to police enforcement of that restraining order. Now, this doesn't mean that police have zero responsibilities. Police can still, violate the Constitution through excessive force, unlawful searches, unlawful arrests, discrimination, or just denial of due process. Departments can also be bound by state law, department policy, training rules, or professional standards. And then citizens can still demand better laws, better training, and better accountability. The point, though, is a deal more narrower, yeah. To protect and serve describes what policing is supposed to be. But courts have generally not treated it as an individual constitutional promise that every person can enforce, especially when police fail to protect them from someone else. And that distinction matters because in modern conversations about domestic violence and school shootings and emergency responses, and then also police accountability, a public motto can do something like, it can express their mission. It's a mission statement, right? But constitutional law asks a more specific question. What did government do? What legal duty existed? And did officials violate a constitutional right? So, what does to protect and serve actually mean? As a motto, it describes public trust. As a constitutional rule, it's a great deal more limited. And the civics question is whether our laws and policies should demand more than the Constitution actually requires. All right, so yeah, to protect and serve, it probably sounded great on Dragnet or whatever 1950s television programs existed that kind of perpetrated that out there. But really, when it all comes down to it, to protect and serve is just branding. It's not necessarily a guarantee of constitutional protections of your rights. Thanks for watching.